When no means no, it means no.
No. No means no.
But justice for my sister,
The way
that's
he was
all I
looking
want.
at her in the club, it was like giving like, oh, like, you're my girl, like, come here. And she was like, no, you know?
She never seemed worried about it.
No,
I saw her on the
she
floor,
was a happy person.
her at 4:21, this morning. And, she was passed away. That's what, what killed her.
She was running and blood just dripping, then she stopped right in the middle. And that's where
The person came out. He went past, but he had mask on. This person, I let him go past. And I'm
At
upset
this
about
time,
that.
we're still gathering information, and we're still just connecting with the police officer.
And they told you they had the man in custody, right?
I am aware.
It makes me feel a certain way as a woman. So imagine people who saw her moving around, may know her, and how do they feel?
It's sad. It's very sad, and the holiday's about to come up, so I know she won't be able to spend Thanksgiving or Christmas or New Year's with her family.
She was like, yelling, "Stop Luis, stop Luis, stop Luis."
What does it take for a man to sit and wait for 2 hours in the dark just for a chance to destroy a life? This isn't a story about a sudden argument or a heated moment. This is a story about a plan. A meticulously executed plan that began the moment a woman named Carmen Yadira Lopez said one simple word.
No.
On a cold Monday morning in Harlem, that word cost her everything. Her car was found running, her purse on the seat, as if she had simply stepped out for a moment. But she never came back. Before we get into the chilling details, if you're new to True Crime Unraveled, you're in the right place for deep, thoughtful case analysis. Subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss our weekly deep dives. Carmen was 47 years old, a mother of 4 sons. Her friends describe her with the same phrase every single time. To know her was to love her. She was the good neighbor on West 129th Street, the one who minded her business, who glowed from the inside out. She wasn't involved in any drama. So why did her ex-boyfriend, Luis Marquez, treat her disappearance not as a tragedy, but as a project? He didn't just snap. He scheduled her murder. He clocked in for it. So the question we have to ask is not what drove him over the edge, but what kind of man operates on this timeline? What twisted math did he do in his head that made 2 hours of waiting seem like a reasonable prelude to violence? This is the story of Carmen Yadira Lopez, a woman whose light was extinguished by a man who believed she was his property. But it's also the story of that 2-hour wait. We're going to break down the predatory patience of Luis Marquez, piece by piece. We'll look at the moment Carmen thought she had made herself perfectly clear, the eerie calm of the surveillance footage, and the grim aftermath that left 4 boys to grow up without their mother. This isn't just a true crime story. It's a case study in the most dangerous form of entitlement, the kind that doesn't rage, but simply waits. Carmen Yadira Lopez had moved on. Her relationship with Luis Marquez was in the rearview mirror. Her friend, Areli, remembered a night at a club where Marquez tried to get Carmen's attention.
The way he was looking at her in the club, it was like giving like, oh, like, you're my girl, like, come here. And she was like, no, you know?
She never seemed worried about it.
No, because she was a happy person.
He looked at her with a sense of ownership, like she was a possession he could summon. And Carmen? She shut it down. Right there, in public, with no hesitation. She drew a line in the sand. For Carmen, that was the end of it. A boundary set, a chapter closed. She went back to her life, to her 4 boys, to the quiet rhythm of work and motherhood. She wasn't looking over her shoulder. Why would she? She had said no. In any sane world, that should have been enough. But Luis Marquez was operating in a different reality. In his world, Carmen's no wasn't a full stop. It was a negotiation he wasn't a part of yet. While she was living her life, he was festering. The rejection wasn't a wound to heal from. It was a debt he believed she now owed. So he started planning. He knew her routines. He knew where she lived. He knew when she'd be most vulnerable. This wasn't a mystery. He had all the information he needed. The night of the murder, Sunday turning into Monday, the Harlem building was quiet. And Luis Marquez was already inside. Surveillance footage shows him entering, a mask on his face. He found a spot on the 3rd floor and he settled in. For 2 hours. Let that number sink in. 120 minutes of sitting in a stairwell, knowing exactly what you are about to do. This is where the fairy tale of the crime of passion goes out the window. There was nothing passionate about this wait. This was cold, hard calculation. Around 4:30 a.m., Carmen came home. She climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor, probably tired, thinking about her boys asleep inside the apartment. She stepped into her hallway, her safe place. And Luis Marquez was there, waiting. The screams that followed tore through the morning silence. Neighbors heard her. They heard her desperate, terrified pleas.
She was like, yelling, "Stop Luis, stop Luis, stop Luis."
Stop. Please stop. They later said they thought it was just an argument, just another loud fight in a New York apartment building. They had no idea they were listening to a woman being murdered. Carmen, bleeding from over 20 stab wounds, tried to run. She stumbled down the hallway, leaving a trail behind her, collapsing just steps from her own front door.
She was running and blood just dripping, then she stopped right in the middle, and that's where she probably collapsed.
Steps from where her sons were sleeping. The building porter found her there during his morning rounds.
I saw her on the floor, at 4:21, this morning. And, she was passed away. That's what killed me.
He saw the blood. He saw her lifeless body, and he knew immediately. She was gone. The police arrived and quickly located surveillance footage. They had a clear picture of the killer. But as they began their manhunt, they got a call from a hospital in the Bronx. A man had just shown up with deep cuts on his hands. And he was about to give them a perfect demonstration of what happens when a man who thinks he's above the law suddenly finds himself caught in its gears. Luis Marquez's plan had a fatal flaw, and it wasn't moral, it was logistical. He thought he could walk away. He fled the building, a neighbor even seeing him leave with his mask on, letting him pass without a second thought. But his hands told a story he couldn't hide. When you stab someone over 20 times, the knife doesn't just cut the victim. It can slip, it can turn on you. Marquez had deep, telling cuts on his hands. The kind of wounds that scream guilty. So he went to Lincoln Hospital in the Bronx, probably thinking he could get patched up and disappear. But hospital staff aren't blind. They saw the nature of his injuries, they contacted the authorities, and by Monday afternoon, the NYPD was placing him under arrest. He was still wearing the clothes from the murder. They found him with blood evidence on him, the cuts on his hands, and the surveillance footage placing him squarely at the scene for those 2 long hours. The case against him was a slam dunk. When they brought him in for questioning, the man who had the patience to wait 2 hours in a dark hallway suddenly had nothing to say. He kept his head down, refusing to speak. The audacity was gone, replaced by a cowardly silence. He was formally charged with murder and held without bail. It seemed like justice would be swift. But for Carmen's family, gathering for a vigil on West 129th Street, justice was a hollow word. They stood in the cold, lighting candles, 4 of them, 1 for each of her sons. Her aunt spoke through tears, saying if they had only known anything about Luis Marquez, they would have done everything to protect her. Everything. But that's the insidious nature of this kind of threat. It often remains hidden until it's too late. At that vigil, Carmen's friend Areli had a clear demand. Justice would mean life behind bars, no plea deals. But as the legal process began, a more disturbing question started to form. This wasn't just about one man. This was about a mindset. And the real horror is realizing how many other Luis Marquezes are out there, right now, waiting for their 2 hours to begin. Let's be crystal clear about what Luis Marquez did.
He didn't snap.
He didn't lose control. A man who loses control acts in an instant. A man who waits for 2 hours is a man in complete control of his actions. He was methodical. He was patient. He was a predator. His actions followed a terrifyingly simple logic. If I cannot have you, then no one can. It's a logic that completely disregards the autonomy, the dreams, the very humanity of the other person. Carmen had done everything right. She said no. She walked away. She built a life without him. She was, by all accounts, a genuinely happy person who didn't let his obsession dim her light. And that, in his twisted worldview, was her final insult. Her happiness, without him, was a provocation. The organization Warm, We All Really Matter, stepped in to help Carmen's family with funeral expenses. Their mission is to shout from the rooftops what we so often whisper.
When no means no, it means no.
No. No means no.
But justice for my sister, that's all I want.
That domestic violence is not a private family matter. It is a crime. And the most dangerous time for any woman is when she tries to leave. That's when a man's sense of ownership is challenged most directly. That's when the waiting begins. Carmen's legacy is not her murder. Her legacy is her 4 sons, who now have to navigate the world without their mother. They'll have birthdays, graduations, and milestones where her absence will be a physical ache. They will grow up knowing that their mother was taken from them, because one man could not accept a word that every child learns by the age of 2.
No.
Luis Marquez was ultimately convicted and sentenced for his crime. But does a conviction really solve the problem? Or does it just close a file? Because the tool he used wasn't just a knife. It was an idea that so many men still carry. And that idea is what we need to talk about right now. The conspiracy in this case wasn't a secret meeting in a shadowy room. It was the conspiracy of silence that surrounds this kind of violence. It's the neighbors who hear screams and dismiss them as just an argument. It's the friends and family who might see the red flags but don't want to get involved. It's the societal tendency to ask, why didn't she just leave? Instead of asking, why did he feel he had the right to stop her? Carmen's story forces us to flip the script. The problem was never Carmen's. The problem was Luis Marquez's inability to listen. His refusal to accept that Carmen Yadira Lopez was the author of her own life. Her no was the complete sentence. He just didn't like the story told. So, what do we do with that? How do we unravel this? It starts by recognizing the pattern. It starts by listening to women when they tell us they are uncomfortable or afraid. It starts by teaching our sons that rejection is not a humiliation, but a part of life. That a woman is never, ever property. The vigil for Carmen ended, but the candles represented something more than just one life. They represent every woman who has been killed for saying no. They are a call to action. To pay attention. To speak up. To understand that no is not the beginning of a debate. It is the end of one. Luis Marquez is behind bars, but Carmen Yadira Lopez is still gone. Her sons are still without their mother. The conviction provides accountability, but it doesn't provide a solution. The solution lies in us. In our willingness to confront the uncomfortable truth that what happened to Carmen wasn't a random, unpredictable act. It was the endpoint of a very common and very dangerous way of thinking. The unanswered question that hangs over this entire case is a societal one. How many other men are out there right now who believe, deep down, that a woman's no is just a suggestion? Until we address that, we are just waiting for the next tragedy to happen. This is where you come in. So what do you think? Is the legal system enough to deter men like Luis Marquez? Or is the real change going to have to happen long before a crime is ever committed in how we raise our kids and talk about respect and consent? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. We at True Crime Unraveled read every single comment on YouTube, Facebook, and TikTok. We see your engagement. We appreciate the passionate discussions, and we want you to keep it coming. To follow more investigations into the world's most compelling and thought-provoking cases, make sure you're subscribed to True Crime Unraveled on YouTube and follow True Crime Unraveled TV on Facebook and TikTok. Hit that bell icon so you don't miss our next video.
Yeah, in fact, I spoke with a neighbor tonight who says he spotted the suspect sitting on the stoop about 2 a.m. this morning. Building workers say somehow he then snuck inside, hid, and waited for this woman to come home, then attacked, leaving 4 children without their mother tonight. Family members embraced outside the Harlem apartment where a mother of 4 came home to a vicious surprise attack hours earlier.
She was saying like, oh, stop, get away from me.
Neighbors were startled awake from the 47-year-old screams in the stairwell. But a neighbor said that it wasn't unusual for people in the building to have loud arguments.
Thinking about it now, I do feel bad because I heard that scream and I possibly could have stopped it.
She was like, yelling, "Stop Luis, stop Luis, stop Luis."
The building's porter was doing trash rounds around 4:30 a.m. when he made the grisly discovery on the 3rd floor.
I saw her on the floor, at 4:21, this morning. And, she was passed away. That's what killed me.
LaRon Middleton said she was lifeless, steps from her apartment door by the time paramedics came, stabbed roughly 18 times.
She was running and blood just dripping, then she stopped right in the middle, and that's where she probably collapsed.
Police recovering surveillance video from the building on West 129th Street, appearing to show a man lying in wait for 2 hours before the victim came home.
The person came out. He went past, but he had mask on. This person, I let him go past, and I'm upset about that.
Sources say the suspect was arrested at a Bronx hospital Monday afternoon in clothing from the murder scene with cuts to his hands.
At this time, we're still gathering information, and we're still just connecting with the police office.
And they told you they had the man in custody, right?
I am aware.
So that man, who is believed to be the victim's ex-boyfriend, according to police sources, after showing up at the hospital, ultimately was told that he had to undergo a psychiatric evaluation. And at this point, charges are pending.
Calls for justice echoing through a tribute tonight in Harlem for a mom of 4 who was murdered in her own apartment building. Her ex-boyfriend now in custody for the crime, and her loved ones are trying to raise awareness of the impact of domestic violence. Eyewitness News reporter Sonia Rincon with the story from their vigil earlier tonight.
This is for our beautiful angel. We remember her because her light now is in every single one of us. Her light is in her 4 children.
Light from candles illuminated the cold night in memory of Carmen Yadira Lopez outside her apartment building. Her family members, emotionally crushed, took comfort in a vigil meant to give them strength as they say goodbye to the beloved mom of 4 boys and shed light on domestic violence.
When no means no, it means no.
No. No means no.
But justice for my sister, that's all I want.
Lopez was attacked in the hallway of this building. Her ex, Luis Marquez, is charged with murder, accused of waiting more than 2 hours here for her to get home Monday morning and stabbing her more than 20 times as she pleaded for him to stop. Her aunt says she didn't deserve to die that way. And she says if they had only known anything about her accused killer, they would have done everything to protect her.
To know her is to love her.
Friend Arlie Ureña says justice would mean life behind bars for Marquez. She remembers seeing him once at a club trying to get Lopez's attention.
The way he was looking at her in the club, it was like giving like, oh, like, you're my girl, like, come here. And she was like, no,
She never seemed worried about it.
No, because she was a happy person.
We want to expose domestic violence for what it is. It's a crime. Let's talk about it, ladies.
Sonia Rincon, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
The Harlem-based domestic violence awareness organization WARM, which is an acronym for We All Really Matter, helping to cover Lopez's funeral expenses. They say anyone who may be in fear for their own safety with a partner can contact their crisis hotline. We posted a link for the organization at ABC7NY.